One of the central tenets of the Christian faith is that Jesus was the Son of God, and he was also God himself in the form of a man. Because he was God, he was perfect and free of sin, as opposed to everyone else who just can't stop sinning because they've been cursed with original sin. And Jesus allowed himself to be crucified so that he could suffer the punishment for all the sins of humanity, essentially taking our place. And he died and stayed dead for a couple days, and then he brought himself back to life. And this means that regardless of what we do, we all have the opportunity to go to heaven, provided that we believe in Jesus, because he nullified the penalty for our sins. So the story goes. And even if we believe this wasn't merely a story, but something that actually happened, there are some parts that just don't make sense. The idea that Jesus could be punished for our transgressions, allowing us to avoid being punished, runs counter to every meaningful concept of justice. Punishing someone for a crime they didn't commit is clearly unjust. If we executed an innocent person for murder and later discovered who the real murderer was, this would be horrifying. And that's exactly the kind of situation our justice system seeks to avoid. We wouldn't tell the murderer, hey, someone died in your place, you're free to go. That's insane. But apparently God's sense of justice is not so well developed. His wrath must be satisfied with blood, and whether it's the blood of the guilty or the innocent makes no difference to him. As long as someone is sacrificed, that's good enough for God. But that doesn't make it right. Of course, the death of Jesus wasn't that much of a sacrifice on his part. To be sure, death by crucifixion is obviously awful, but the significance of giving up your life in this manner is really diminished when you come back to life a few days later. Christians like to talk about how Jesus gave his life for us, and yet he faced death knowing he would return to life. And then he resurrected himself. So what did he really give up? What's the point of dying as a sacrifice in someone else's place if you don't stay dead? Ultimately, nothing was sacrificed. And then there's the questionable rationale for the very existence of Jesus. Was it really necessary for God to incarnate himself as his own son and sacrifice himself to himself in order to appease himself? Instead of orchestrating this whole convoluted plan, couldn't he have chosen to just forgive us for our sins? After all, he can do anything. He's God. What's stopping him? And again, this is a God whose sense of justice is so indiscriminate, the execution of an innocent person was completely acceptable to him. So if God is satisfied by punishment without guilt, why would he object to guilt without punishment? What's the problem with simply forgiving us without insisting that someone be sacrificed in the process? By setting this plan in motion, God was choosing to forgive us anyway. That was the ultimate goal. So why not just do that? The entire life of Jesus was nothing more than a superfluous contrivance, and considering the fundamental injustice of his sacrificial death, that was neither sacrificial nor death, this wasn't even worth contriving. Remind me again why this is supposed to be the greatest story ever told?